Music to our ears, isn't it, folks? Today we are expanding more on the Detroit Red Wings and getting into some of the information we should know about, heading into today's contest against the Chicago Blackhawks. That's right, the Red Wings have themselves a preseason game, their first of the season. Montreal also has a game too, so that's going to be fun to watch, but ultimately, we will be paying attention to the NHL's preseason action. Detroit versus Chicago is coming up on tap. However, the most recent Detroit Red Wings performance we had seen was during the red and white game that we talked about in yesterday's commentary. We spoke about Emmett Finney and Amadeus Lombardi, how these guys were really good in that showcase, and how they are showing off a lot of exciting things for Red Wings fans looking into the future. It's finally time, I'd say, that the Wings are getting these young guys and actually seeing great things out of them. With that said, though, there is another player in the Red Wings organization who's not really a young guy anymore. You know him from the title and the thumbnail of this video. He also happens to be the captain of the team. Today we're talking about Dylan Larkin and just how everything seems to have changed for him. Now, that's a very dramatic way to put it, but I think it's a fairly accurate way. Because one of the big standout stories for the Detroit Red Wings towards the ending-ish parts of last season was Dylan Larkin's attitude towards it all. I'll say attitude for lack of a better word. But after the Four Nations face-off, Dylan Larkin kind of seemed a little off, and it's kind of hard to explain just verbally without giving any visual examples, but essentially, Larkin was playing at the Four Nations for Team USA, super competitive environment. They're playing off in super important games against Canada, against Finland, against Sweden, lots of high intensity and lots of emotion in there too. Larkin had a pretty important spot on that US team, scoring some big goals and making some big plays. And after that tournament concluded, with a loss by the way for Team USA, Larkin went back over to this Detroit Red Wings team that definitely didn't have the same level of intensity, nor any form of that same competitive edge. The Red Wings last season kinda stunk. And post-Four Nations break, things were really bad right out the gate. I think they won like 3 games in, 10 or 11, something like that? They quickly fell out of favor in the playoff race, and eventually around the trade deadline, the Wings didn't do anything. They didn't add, and Dylan Larkin expressed his frustration with that decision in the media afterwards. There was this notion that was like, okay, this guy's kind of maybe a little bit fed up with all the losing, and maybe fed up that his GM Stevie Y didn't make the necessary trades to try to improve the team's ability to win in the short term. Stevie Y then responded. He didn't throw his player under the bus, but he responded and he said, yeah, I addressed those comments privately with Larkin, and that was it. You know, fans, we're not going to get insight to absolutely everything that goes on behind closed doors, but we learned that they did talk about this behind the scenes, so that's fine, right? The Wings missed the playoffs, and then they had the summer they had. Yzerman didn't really get anybody huge or significant, just some extra names like JVR and Mason Appleton and some others. Also had some pretty good draft picks as well. I still love that Carter Bear pick that the Wings ended up making. But now, after the red and white scrimmage, and after all of this preseason training camp stuff, it seems like we're starting to see the tides turning mentally for Dylan Larkin whenever he talks about this team now. Because I'd say, based off of the red and white scrimmage and some of the stuff we had seen, the prospect tournament and some of the extra footage from camp, I'd say that as a Red Wings fan, it's kind of reasonable to be optimistic. There was a lot to like out of the training camp footage that we saw, as well as that red and white game, and that's reflected in what Larkin has been talking about too. Here's a comment on the R Detroit Red Wings subreddit from Submission Denied. Larkin saying that this was probably his favorite camp since his career started is telling. Seems like everyone liked how Todd was running this camp. Hopefully, it's a good sign. Especially last year, when they all said how tough camp was last year. Another reply here says, I think top-of-the-class students like Larkin always love the hard teachers. I think he mentioned that he wasn't very pleased with how he knew more about hockey than Lalonde, but now Todd is like a real coach to him. This also bodes very well with what Patrick Kane was like last season. I'm not saying what Patrick Kane said, but what Patrick Kane was like, because we can all remember when Lalonde was still with the Wings, Kane was kind of checked out, especially towards the end of Lalonde's tenure. The team was losing games, Patty wasn't playing well, he was just so lazy on the puck, lackadaisical. You can tell this was not a coach that they wanted to play for. And then when Todd McLellan came in, everything changed. It was like a light switch flicked on, and it was like, all right, yeah, now we can play proper hockey. I mean, that's not to discredit Patrick Kane. He's one of the best players of his generation, and he's still pretty good. If he's not performing up to his standard, I think a lot of that can be because he chose not to, rather than, oh, he just fell off. Now, with Todd McLellan, you're getting a similar response out of Larkin. And these comments were talked about all over social media. Here's an article posted on MLive.com earlier yesterday. How Larkin said it was unbelievable, the Grand Rapids crowd at the red and white game. Matthew Ehler posted this article, it'll be in the description below. It's an unbelievable atmosphere, Larkin said. I'm not surprised knowing the hockey fans here in Grand Rapids, and I'm sure there's people that drove from all over the west side of the state, or all over the state, to come and watch and cheer us on and show some support today. That was really special, and it'll be something I always remember. The article went out there and said this. Larkin, who played in Detroit's AHL affiliate in 2015, said the high-energy vibes gave Sunday a game-like feel, and an intensity that was palpable. It was a productive game and good to get back on an NHL ice surface, Larkin said. We're tired of playing against each other. We've been going at each other for 4 days now, and we're ready. You saw it get physical there, and that's good for our group. I'd like to hit someone else now, and play against someone else, and play with Kane and DeBrincat and Casper, instead of against them. So some pretty inspiring things out of Dylan Larkin here. Seems like he's getting excited for the season, and, depending on if he's actually available in today's game, which at the time of recording this audio we actually don't know, we'll see whether or not that actually bleeds into the preseason. This article also has some quotes from Alex Tanguay, the Red Wings assistant coach. What those players do in the summertime is play summer hockey, so there's no stopping, and there's not really that motion. Once you get into the games and in tight spaces, you get your feels back. It's important for our players to get their feels back, get their legs back, and to get bumped a few times to know what it feels like playing again. Playing every day raised their competitive juices just a little bit. And, of course, there are a number of other players whose comments are talked about in this article. There's some commentary made by Emmett Finney, whom we had spoken about earlier, and then there's some descriptions on some other guys, DeBrincat, Raymond, etc. But aside from that, I think Dylan Larkin, as long as he's feeling motivated and good, I think there is room for Red Wings fans to start cautiously being optimistic about the potential of that playoff drought coming to an end. Is it absolutely guaranteed? No, definitely not. But is it something where it's like, all right, well, if the players are in the right headspace and if Todd is providing the proper coaching, is there a much higher chance that the team plays better than they did under Lalonde last year? I'd say yeah. There's a much better chance, right? Unless everybody totally sucks or everybody gets hurt. Of course, knock on wood, none of that happens. And I did knock on wood, by the way. But I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How Dylan Larkin seems like his mind has changed from the end of last season. Sure, he might still want to be competitive, but now he's really feeling it. How does this make you feel as a Wings fan? Will you be tuning in to today's Chicago Blackhawks matchup? If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button. If you didn't like this video, that dislike button is there for you. Please hit that as well. Comments are greatly appreciated. They help out with the algorithm. Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Roll 9, and bye.